Okay, everybody, it's just ticked over to 3:30, so we'll get started. And I just wanted to say welcome to everybody to Catholic Learning Online Apple Teacher 21 or CLOET 21. It's great to have so many of you on board. I know, even though it's week one of term, that everybody's busy, and it seems like we've been back at school for the last 6 years. So thank you for making the time. And of course, your Apple teacher journey doesn't start here, but it's definitely continuing to progress here. I'm just working my way through this little challenge that I have with a lost mouse. So, if it looks like I can't read something, it's probably because I can't read something. A little bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded and the whole session is recorded, so we can put the entire recording up. So you'll be able to go back to anything that we record here that we show today. You'll be able to go back and have a look at and share with your colleagues or with your students. Please, if you're not speaking, have your microphone muted. I think everybody's pretty good at that now. But it's nice to see people's faces occasionally as well. So if you can have, if your bandwidth is okay, it's nice to have an idea of whether people are connecting with what we're talking about. At this point in time, I would also like to say a big welcome to our special guests. That's everybody from the various dioceses and the Catholic Learning Online team, the Apple special guests, who I won't name, and also Mark Hamlet, who's going to run one of our sessions today. As we gather today across our various dioceses, we gather on country. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this great land. Always was, always will be. We'll pray together. Lord God, we thank you that you promise to be with us always. Thank you that your presence is with us. For you are our wise counselor, our perfect partner, and our faithful friend. Thank you, Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Now, as I already mentioned, this particular course is brought to you through Catholic Learning Online, which is a CENET e-learning group initiative. And you can see on the screen here a listing of names from various dioceses. So all these people are working together to bring this course to the various dioceses. And I'd like to just thank them for doing that. And if you do need to get in contact with somebody from your diocese, then hopefully you'll recognize one of those names. If you don't recognize the person from your diocese, maybe just mention that in the chat, and somebody who's in the background there will be able to jump online and point you in the right direction. Now, our overview for today's session is we're going to have a teacher spotlight. So I already mentioned that Mark Hamlet is using Pages learning journals really well with his students. So we're going to explore. Yesterday I went out and I sat down with some of the students in his class, and we got a little bit of video of what's happening in his classroom. We spoke to some of the students, and then Mark's going to break it down for us. And then there's another little session called Top 10 Tricks for Me. Okay, and that's recognizing that personalization is a big part of getting the most out of your Mac. So we're going to teach you about the things that work for different people. And some of those things are going to be great for you, and hopefully you'll be able to embrace them and take them on board. It's a little bit of an extension on the Mac badge. So our learning intentions are we're going to develop the skills and knowledge to use our Macs really effectively to improve learning and teaching. We're going to enhance and transform student learning experiences, and we're going to promote creativity. We're going to develop our new skills and ideas. We're going to engage our students, reflect on how we're using the technology, and share ideas and collaborate together as a community. That's the great benefit of working across so many dioceses at one time. And for today, we're going to learn about how students and teachers are using and experiencing Pages learning journals so that you're primed up for our next session, which is around how we actually create in Pages. And you're going to have some new skills and ideas about how you can use your Mac. So we posed the question on that very first slide about where you would go for the weekend if you had the choice. And I understand that not many people have the choice. And I also understand that at this point in time, not many people would have been thinking of this. I was really hoping that somebody would have said San Francisco because it just so happened I had this prepared in the background. But I wanted to quickly show you one of the features that's in Maps that you may not have seen yet. So I'll just escape out of the presentation. And there's a couple of ways that I get around my computer. I'll speak about this later, but Command Tab is going to show me each of the apps that I have open, and I can just go across to Maps because I happen to already have it open. If I didn't have it open, I'd press Command Space and that would bring up Spotlight, and I'd start to type Maps and the computer would do the rest for me. So either way, we get to Maps, and I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you can see. So I've been searching for Paris because it turns out I might be heading to Paris, which is a bit of a funky name drop, but maybe we can explain that a little bit later on. But if I do my search for Paris, it's going to show me an aerial view. In fact, I've got a satellite view turned on, but you'll notice there's a little option here called a flyover tour. And when you click on a flyover tour for a great many cities in the world, it's going to develop a 3D representation of the city. And then it's going to give you a flyover tour showing the various parts of the city that most people are interested in seeing. So if I was working with my students and we wanted to explore Paris or San Francisco or any number of hundreds of cities around the world, I can come in here and we can have a look at this tour of the city from an aerial view in Maps. Now, I could also be recording my screen so that students could take this recording, break it down and put it into Keynote or iMovie or a range of different apps and actually start to create a tour of the city along with information about the various sites that we're visiting within the city. And this is all built into Maps on your Mac. So I thought that was worth mentioning and a nice little tie-in with the activity that we started with. All right, I'm just going to jump out of that now. And I'll go back to my presentation here. And now, as I've already mentioned, we're going to hear from Mark Hamlet very soon. We're going to start with a little video that we created yesterday in this class. And this is learning a little bit about a unit of work where he's created a great portfolio, learning journal, workbook, call it what you will. It's actually all three of those things around this particular TAS unit. So we'll start by hearing from the students.
Japan has been hit by its biggest earthquake since records began.
An explosion was heard and smoke seen at the power plant.
The images of destruction and flooding coming out of Japan are simply heartbreaking.
Welcome to Engineered Systems. In this topic, we're going to be looking at Fukushima, or in particular, Fukushima Daiichi, which is a nuclear power plant in Japan that melted down in 2011 after a catastrophic earthquake followed by an enormous tsunami that wiped it out. The damage was so bad, it's going to take about 40 years to fix it, if they have the technology. And currently, they don't have that technology. So we're going to be looking at how engineering can help fix that problem, and maybe one day you might be actually working there. Who knows?
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about what you do in the workbooks?
So first, we've been working with the MBOTs. So they have the lesson plan and we tick what have we done so we can know what work we've done so we don't forget. And when we finished all the MBOT stuff, we take a screenshot and we press this plus button and we add a photo or video and we insert it there. so we can show that we've done all the MBOT lessons. And it talks about them multiple times, and you can take a screenshot of the MBOT coding so you can do it again and you don't forget your code. And you can insert videos and photos everywhere, wherever you want. And sometimes there's questions, and you can write your answers there by double tapping that, and you can insert text. There's also checkpoints where you go to Google Classroom and you finish them so the teacher knows what you're up to and how good you've been working. There's also different titles and different subjects that you're learning in the books.
Awesome. Do you enjoy using the workbooks?
Yes, I do. It's really easy and helpful.
What's the best part about it?
I like how it's on iPad, so you can't forget your book at home because you always have your iPad on you.
So it's pretty fun, the workbook. It's helped me a lot, and it's a lot better than using a normal book because you get to actually like voice to text, which is a lot better than writing it, and it's also a lot neater due to like typing, and it's a lot better than a book overall.
Favorite part of using the workbook?
Probably the photos that we can input on them.
What's your favorite part?
Probably the easy bit of it, inserting the videos. It's definitely that we get to play Minecraft and we get to use the MBOTs because they're really interesting.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of the workbook?
That we don't have to like use paper and like we don't have to write with things. We just sort of type and say stuff, and then you get to use robots and stuff.
Thank you.
Probably the MBOTs.
Yeah.
Probably coding the MBOTs.
Okay, so just a quick overview there. I just thought it was good to hear about the students' experiences of using the workbooks in that particular unit of work. And we're going to hear from Mark in just a second. I'm actually going to stop my share here so that Mark can share if he needs to. And Mark's going to tell us a little bit about the various features of the workbook. One thing I did want to point out is even though those students are completing the workbooks on an iPad, it's 95% the same doing it if students had a Mac. And so for those students, by the time they reach year 9 or year 10, they'd be doing similar things on their Mac. It just so happened that that junior class was on iPads. So if I could just hand over to Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, and it's good to see you wearing the same T-shirt as you were in the video.
Yeah, that's because that way I don't blend into the background, right? So it looks better. Yeah, thanks for that. That was actually a pretty cool video. I thought it was kind of funny that one of the students there was talking about Minecraft. We actually haven't started using Minecraft yet, but he's excited about it, so that's good. With that workbook, I mean, you were talking about how we use it, and the kids were talking about how we use it. My actual intention originally, my first intention when I wrote that book was I had seen Apple demonstrate using the smart annotation feature, and they'd used it with their iPad, where you could have students work on the iPad and they could just handwrite all over it, and then that would automatically turn back up on the students' iPads. And I just thought that would be awesome. I thought, imagine that, having all of my students' workbooks on my one device, and I could just handwrite any annotations I needed and it would turn up. Now, it turns out that it's, for a high school teacher anyway, there were a few limitations around actually making that work correctly. I did test it, I did get it working correctly, but there were some limitations. And I think I've got some solutions to that. One of them was a temporary solution, was that checkpoint that they were talking about. So with the checkpoint, I basically, rather than having the workbooks basically loading onto my device all the time, I could simply just have them do a screenshot, put it in the classroom, and then I actually get them to do a couple other things as well, which was beneficial. But if I was using my Mac, that wouldn't be too much of an issue. So if they were using their Macs, I was using my Mac, I could have done that. My original intention was to try and use this annotation feature. But it kind of grew from there, because then afterwards, I'd built the first book and put it all together. And then it was actually doing this course last year. And I remember you were explaining a couple of things, and I saw a couple of other teachers also, suggesting some different ideas, what they could do with it. And that's when I thought, wow, actually, you know what? I could make this even better. I can put in more videos and I can bring in more audio recordings. And so that class that you saw yesterday, they're actually using the older book. The new one actually has options where the students actually reflect on some of their learning by creating a like an audio recording, just a short audio recording. I've got 3 key questions at the end of each section, and I asked them to do that. So I can also listen back to those, and it gives them that more of a, I guess, multimodal sort of way of engaging in the content and also giving me feedback as well. So that was kind of really my intentions.
Excellent. And did you want to share your screen and show the workbook, or would you?
I actually,
That's a little
funny enough, I don't have, I'm sitting in front of my MacBook Air and I realized I hadn't installed it on my MacBook Air. My other Mac over here, it is. So yeah, I can't actually share it. So yeah, I didn't realize, but yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
Not a problem. I'll step in here and do that for you.
Awesome.
I've just got this amazing sun coming through the window at the moment, which is great, but a bit difficult to see. I can see Paris is still spinning around in the background there too. So Mark's workbook here, there's actually a video that I'll include on the website as well, because it's Mark explaining to the students about how to use the workbook, and it's really instructional. It's a great video. I didn't want to show the whole thing because I didn't necessarily want people to go into too much depth, but he's got his success criteria. He's got a video here, which is the first part of the video we saw explaining how they can use the workbook, the checklist where the students go through and tick off the various tasks that they need to complete as they go through the particular workbook. One of the functions that I really like, or one of the features of Mark's workbook, is the sections where the students have to write content or respond to questions or do some research are actually color-coded this yellow color, which means that it's really easy for Mark to go through and for the students to go through and find the sections where they should have added content. So these sections are again, rich learning opportunities, but the sections that are yellow are the sections where we're going to have students adding their research. And you'll notice that they said they're inserting audio recordings, they're inserting video recordings, they're taking screenshots. So they're able to demonstrate their knowledge in a really wide range of ways. I'm just wondering if, while we've got Mark sitting there, and he's a great person to ask questions, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask Mark? You can turn your microphone on, or you can put the question in chat. Okay, so Glenn is actually asking you, how did you plan out the workbook before you started making it?
Okay, that's a good question. Basically, when we started the course a couple of years ago, we started with a Google Slides presentation, and we were just looking for an easy way for students to answer questions and then add in some images as they went. And we found that, that was a quick and easy way for us to do it, and it linked in nicely with Google Classroom. So the planning of the actual book itself originally was based on the program. We've written the program and we just kind of went methodically through it. When I decided to make the change and move it over to Apple Pages, that's when I started thinking, well, what else can I add in here, and where can I take it? And at the same time, we were also looking at, we were doing stuff with ESL students as well. So I then thought, well, what other extension activities towards the end, there's a whole bunch of different extension activities could I put in there? So I started just planning it out like that. So really, it was just methodically going through the program initially that we'd written.
Okay, so I've got a question here from JJ, which is just saying what a great workbook it is. What's the biggest challenge with you making it, and is there anything that you do differently if you were to start from scratch?
The biggest challenge is probably time. To be absolutely honest, it took ages. And that was because I was learning how to use Pages at the time as well. So I was still trying to figure out how to do things. And one of the things I learned was that I started off with a template, because at the time I didn't know a huge amount. I've been using Pages on and off for years, but I never really used it a lot, other than just doing some basic stuff with students. So I started with a template, and that was kind of frustrating because I didn't understand how pages worked. So if I was to do it again, I would start from scratch now that I know how it works. And when I say how it works, I mean about how elements work on the page, because Pages basically is not just a word processor. And I think that's what's really awesome about it. It is also like a desktop publishing software. So if you've ever used, Adobe InDesign, for example, it has those same elements. You can grab text boxes, you can move them around, you can lock them in place. And that's the other big tip. If you're going to do something like this, make sure you lock your text boxes and images down, because otherwise what happens when the students start using it, they tap or click and they move things everywhere and it screws up all the formatting. So the only things that are not locked down are the spots where I want students to either add in an image in or video or answer questions. Everything else has been locked. And you can do that just by literally control click on whatever element it is and then just choose lock and it locks it in place.
Am I right in saying too, Mark, the version that I was working with last year in the same course, I think was only about half the size. So this continues to grow and become richer and more inclusive as you go through.
Yeah, and that was based on, again, last year when I was doing this course and I saw other people suggesting things, that's when I thought, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if I could do that? So I'd go away and figure it out and then start adding all those extra bits and pieces. So it's kind of an evolution, and it probably hasn't stopped. I'll probably come up with more stuff to fit in there. I don't know whether I'm going to get time to use it all, but it looks nice.
Yeah, it looks like a great workbook for, say, a 150-week course. Anyway, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge around this and what you've been able to create. Question without notice, would you mind if we shared this with the participants if they were interested in having a look?
Go for it. Yeah, no problem at all. Please feel free, have a look. And
great.
Maybe it will inspire other people to do some cool stuff too.
Yeah, perfect. So for those people who did the course last year, we actually pulled apart the workbook and had a look at different strategies and how to use particular or how to incorporate particular strategies. So having people doing mind maps or the different elements, why certain activities would suit students explaining their understanding via video rather than text, using text to speech. There's a whole lot of depth there, but if you unpack this, you'll sort of start to get an understanding of how that works. And of course, you'll notice that there's some commonality in Pages. So if we had another set of questions for students, you might just copy this particular page, change the questions and put it in. You don't have to start from scratch each time. But wonderful piece of work. Thanks so much, Mark, for coming along to share your work. And thank you for sharing the actual finished product as well. As I said, I should have asked you that before we were live on camera, but I know that you are very open to sharing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked you in this public forum. So thank you very much for that. If there's any other questions, I'm just having a look at the chat. Plenty of people are saying thank you. So appreciate you coming along today as well. Mark did the course last year. And we're definitely leaning on him this year because he's implemented so much of it and it's really taking it to the next level. So I've just got my screen sharing on, so I might just jump back into my presentation if there's no more questions from Mark. Can't see any questions there. All right, so this next section, it's called 10 Things That Rock, and then if I was presenting that for me would come in later, because so much of what we do on our Mac that makes it powerful is how we customize it for ourselves and how our students customize it for their needs as well. So ourselves as learners and as teachers, and for our students as learners and teachers as well. So we need to set up our device and we need to use it in a way that makes it powerful for us. Okay, and so my list of 10 things, and I actually cheated. I put 11 in. I wasn't sure whether I'd tell you or see if I got caught out. But my 10 things or 11 things are probably going to be different to yours. But that doesn't mean there's probably 250,000 tips. Okay. But the things that are going to make a difference to you will make a really big difference. And so hopefully there's some commonality in that. And one of the biggest things that I think should be happening as a teacher is that you have Do Not Disturb turned on when you're presenting. So you'll notice today that I haven't had any text messages pop up or other things pop up on my screen via notifications, because that would be distracting. Okay, and what we don't want to be in classroom is then to have someone randomly send you a message that you don't need your students to see. So if I come up to this little button here, you can see that I have an option here that says do not disturb. And so when I click on do not disturb, I can say just for an hour. I've got it set to this evening because I don't mind being disturbed this evening, or I can have it set to tomorrow. Now, if I was a teacher and I was plugging my device into a projector every day, I'm not going to remember to do that every day. I know myself, I just know I'm not going to. So I would come into notifications preferences, and in here, I would set this from say 8 o'clock in the morning till maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I better change that to PM. And now automatically do not disturb is going to be turned on each day between 8 and 4. So that's going to mean that I'm not going to be disturbed. Well, I'm not going to have notifications and so forth pop up when I'm presenting. So I think that's a useful thing to do, particularly if you're regularly plugged into a screen. Now, Spotlight I already mentioned. I think this is critically important. Command and space brings up my search, and I can search for an app, I can search for a file, I can search for text within a file. It's very, very powerful. This computer is so much quicker than me coming down to my dock and looking for a particular app, or opening up the apps folder, or looking for a particular file. So all I need to do is start typing in there. It guesses what I'm after, and it's very good at guessing because I probably look for the same things all the time. Okay, and if I hit return now, it's going to open up, in this case, that particular app. Okay, so Spotlight is really useful. Stacks. How many people are using Stacks, I wonder? Now, what you'll see over here is my artificially tidy desktop. And this is my normal desktop. Now, what's the difference? The difference is Stacks. So I right click, or I two-finger click on my mouse, and you'll see there's an option here called Use Stacks. And what Stacks does by default is groups all the documents on my desktop in like groupings. So all the PDFs go together, all the images go together. It tidies up my desktop without me actually tidying up my desktop. So before I do a presentation, I make sure I've got Stacks on because it's really useful for me to look like I'm tidy. Now, one thing you'll notice here is I can group by a range of different ways. And just out of interest, let's have a look at, say, date last opened. And you'll see that there's a stack here that was last opened in, say, 2019. Now, I'm tipping if I haven't opened something in the last 2 years, I don't need it on my desktop. I could pretty comfortably get rid of that stack altogether. So please, if that's going to help you, please do it. If you do have things that you haven't opened since 2019 on your desktop, take a moment and delete them, I would suggest. Now, one of my colleagues at work has a desktop that has about 18,000 files on it. It looks terrible. I keep trying to convince her to use Stacks, but Stacks hides the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. So you typically don't want too much on your desktop. Now, this particular tip, if you like, import from phone or iPad, is really, really important. It's so useful as a teacher. Now, I can't actually demo it live today because I've broken one phone and I've got a brand new phone sitting next to me. I'll hold them up, and I'm in the process of transferring from one to the other. So they're both out of play. But essentially, a very similar process to what I was just doing. In fact, I could do it straight into a Keynote document, for example, would be to come in and, again, I'm going to right click. And it's working out that it can't actually see my phones because unfortunately they're not in play. But if it could, I could insert from iPhone or iPad, and that will have a look at my particular tools of the trade. And it'll let me take a photo or scan a document from my phone, and it'll go straight into my Mac or the particular document that I'm working on. Super useful if I'm working with students' work, for example. If I want to grab a copy of a student's piece of work and have it go straight in, I don't have to take a photo and then send it through. I don't have to worry about any of those things. I can have it right here from my Mac take the photo and it turns up on my Mac. So really useful one. I'm just continuing down the list. And again, that phone call I just got was actually Kieran, my son. So what I find is I spend my life trying to organise my son, because if you've got kids, you probably do exactly the same thing. And what I found is he's away a lot, and I really don't get to talk to him that often, but I found that every time I was talking to him, I was telling him this great big list of things he needed to do. So I needed to find a way of not having to annoy him each time that I spoke with him. So we set up this system of shared reminders so that as something comes in and we know that we need to do it, both of us can add to this list and we can both tick it off. So we know that there's somewhere to go where we can work together on a particular set of reminders. Now, this could be good for structuring some work for a particular student who needed a bit more support. Anywhere where you need a set of reminders or a list that you could work through, shared reminders could be really useful. Screenshots, I use screenshots all the time. Shift Command 5, strangely enough, I say Command Shift 5, will bring up your various options. Now, people would know about Command Shift 3 or Command Shift 4, which is the way we used to do it. Command Shift 5 gives you all the various options. So capturing stills, the full screen, the window that you're in, a selected portion of the screen. And likewise with video, the entire screen or a selected part of the screen, we can create a video. This is really useful for creating resources for students anytime we want to create any kind of instructional thing. The other thing that I love is the options, because typically it's traditionally saved the screenshot to your desktop, and your desktop is covered by screenshots. I come into the options here and I say I want it to go into my downloads, and my desktop doesn't get covered in screenshots. So it works really well. I think that's a super important thing to know how to use. Switching apps. How often do you come up to a student who happens to be working on their Mac? You're pretty sure they're doing the wrong thing, and then you have a look and it's just Keynote or Pages or something open. So Command Tab is the way we switch between apps, but as a teacher, it's a really good way to see which apps students have open. So if I press Command Tab, each time I press Tab, it takes me to the next app along. So if I wanted to have a look at a particular app, I just switch through and let go when I'm on that particular app. It's the quickest way to switch apps. And as a teacher, it's a good way of seeing what the students might actually be up to. The other way that I do that as a teacher, or in fact, I'd ask the students to do it, 4 fingers sliding up is going to show me all the windows that are open here. And I can go across to the various different desktops and have a look at how many workspaces are open and which apps are open within those particular workspaces. Now, it turns out I've been on task, so congratulations to me. Character Viewer. Sometimes when you're used to using iOS devices all the time, it gets a little bit frustrating because you can't actually access all your emojis. So by pressing Control, Command, and Space, I get my emojis up and I can insert them anywhere. Okay, and isn't that useful? Now, some people are going, who cares? Some people think this is amazing. So by all means, feel free to forget that or remember that if it suits your particular needs. Hide. When would you want to hide? You probably don't want to hide very often, but again, sometimes students will use this. So just be aware that that's an option, and the old Command Tab will show you all the things that are open, even the ones that are hidden. So hide can be useful. And then this one, again, as a teacher, I find this particularly useful. So I'm just going to come up to the little green button here and click on it, hold it, and I'm going to tile my screen to the left side, which is going to give me the option to put a different window on this other side here. So what I do, in fact, I'm just going to jump out of that and switch across to here. So I'm going to tile this to the left-hand side of the screen, and then maybe I'm going to have my notes on the right-hand side of the screen. And I can grab the slider to adjust the size. But what this lets me do is have a piece of students' work open. I can be giving them feedback on one side of the screen. I can be recording grades. I can be recording feedback. I could have Google Classroom or any number of different things open in the 2 different split screens so that I'm working on both at the same time. Now, yes, I could have manually adjusted the sizes over and over and over again to try and make them right, but with 2 simple clicks. So just holding under the green button and tell it to go to the left or the right hand side of the screen. That can be really useful. Let's try and maximize the space that we have on our screen. Try and make it as efficient as it can be. And show it over there. And the last one, again, as a teacher, I think this is critically important. Now, I like to use dictation. It works really well when you're at home. It's not necessarily great if you're in a noisy office. But if I double click on the function key, notice that this turns up here and dictation is turned on. So it's actually listening to my voice and writing what I am speaking. Full stop. If I wanted to give a substantial amount of feedback to a student, I would turn on dictation and just let the computer do the typing. Full stop. When I'm done, I click done and it's off. Now, this is a really good tool. There's a bit of a story behind it, I guess, but a little while back, I broke my neck and I was in a pretty bad way for a while. And I was using dictation for all of my emails and it worked a treat. So again, this is an accessibility function, but it's great for teachers with, it's great for students, it's great for teachers giving feedback, it's great for students who are having trouble with their writing. It has a whole massive range of uses. So that was 10 things, and it was actually 11 because sometimes I cheat a little bit. 11 things that I think make a big difference to the way I use the Mac and the way you can use the Mac. Can you think of one thing that wasn't mentioned there? Maybe you can turn your microphone on, or maybe you can go into chat. Can you think of one thing that would make a difference? One thing that others should know about? Okay, so Bruno's just missed how I turned on dictation. And what I did was I double pressed on the function button. Okay, and dictation came up. Now, if that's not working for you, what you would need to do is come into the system preferences. Okay, and if you know where dictation is, you can go straight to it. But anytime you're not sure where something is, just search, because again, the computer is better than us at remembering things and searching things. Okay, so you can see here that dictation is turned on and my shortcut is function key twice. If it's not turned on for you, just click on the on button and it will be turned on. Okay, I like that Glenn's just come up with an idea there. He actually likes the hide button, or sorry, the option, Apple Option H button, which hides everything but the app that you're in. Okay, because he likes to get rid of all the rubbish. I tend to move into a different workspace. Everybody's got a different strategy, and that's good, you know, because you've got to set it up to suit yourself. All right, I'm just going to jump back into finishing off today's presentation. Just a quick revisit on the course requirements. You've got your 6 Mac badges. So this is the requirements for NESA registration. So if you're from Queensland and you don't need NESA registration, yes, the rules might be a little bit different. You do need to earn your 6 Mac badges. You need to access the virtual check-in sessions. Now, if you can do that live, that's great. If you need to watch the recordings, that's fine as well. We've got the Apple Teacher Journal. Okay, so you need to work your way through that as well. You're going to download your Apple Teacher Report, which is a report that's listed over on the right-hand side there. Create your social media frame and complete the course evaluation form. So that's about it. It's not too complicated. There is a page that will support you to do this. I'll just grab the link here and paste it into the chat. So that link that's just gone into the chat there, that's the page with a couple of movies that will show you how to complete the course. Now, the course evaluation form isn't up yet because, of course, we haven't had all of our sessions, our check-in sessions. But once that's done, it will be available. Things to try before next time. Have a think about how you could use a Pages Learning Journal with your students. Have a good look at Mark's Pages Learning Journal. Don't start with a 135-page version. Maybe start with a 5-page version or a 2-page version that the students can just get through in a double period. Okay, but think about how you might use that, because the next session is about learning about how to use Pages and extending upon the learning that's available within the Pages badge. We would always encourage you to contribute to our community. We'd love you to explore the CLO Apple Teacher website. And again, that link was in the chat. You can find a lot of things there, including the recordings of the various sessions. On Twitter, Cloat21. If you post something with that hashtag, it'll turn up in the Twitter feed and people can see the kind of things that you've been doing in your classroom. So if you do have a Twitter account, we'd love to see you posting on there using this hashtag. Okay, and likewise, if you'd rather go to the Mac site and add something to the Padlet, you just double click there and add something that you're doing in your class. That would be great as well. It's great to share what's happening, because teachers using these tools in their classroom is what makes a difference to student learning. Now, here's the session tracker for today. So if you scan that QR code, you'll be able to go to the evaluation. Now, I'll jump out of the presentation for a second, and I'm going to grab that URL and paste that into the chat. So if you click on that URL in the chat, that's the session tracker for today. Okay, and with each of these recordings, the session tracker goes up next to it as well. So you can just show that you've worked with whatever it is that we covered on that particular session. And our next virtual check-in, I'm not sure what I did with this image, but somehow I managed to flatten it so I couldn't move the 22 and turn it into a 6, but it's on May 6, which is about a fortnight away. So the next virtual check-in, it's around Pages, it's presented by Apple, which means that that section, well, actually that section can be recorded, but not the entire check-in will be recorded. But if you want to learn a little bit more about Pages, how to do some of those interesting things that Mark's doing, the next session is at 3:30 on Thursday, May 6. Now, one last thing that I wanted to say is thank you very much for your attention and for coming along to these sessions and really working with Apple Teacher to do incredible things for your students. I do very much appreciate that. I'm saying farewell now because I'm going away for about 3.5 months or so, and you'll be finished the course by the time I get back. Now, luckily, there's plenty of people to step into my shoes, and the people that are on this particular list, including someone who will be coming in to take my actual role. Now, I'm not sure who that is yet, but you'll be able to be in contact with them or your person from your diocese, and they'll be able to help you out with any particular concerns. I just want to thank you very much for the way that you've embraced the course so far. And you know, I thank you on behalf of your students. I'd very much like to say thank you to Mark Hamlet again today for coming along, for sharing his workbook, for being generous yesterday and opening his classroom so that I could grab some video to share with everybody else. Of course, the Apple team and the CLO team that are in the background there, thank you very much for coming along and answering questions in the chat and making it a bit easier to present. And so that's it for today.